Well, good morning, Mr. Conroy. We're happy to have you here at the Sun. You're running for state treasurer, the nomination for the in the Democratic primary against two other rivals. Why don't you tell us briefly a little about yourself and maybe list some of the priorities why you're running for office and voters should give you their endorsement.
Well, thank you very much, Jim, and thank you, Chelsea and Dave, and my thanks to the Lowell Sun for inviting me in today, offering me an opportunity to share with voters and viewers and all of you why I'm running for state treasurer and what I hope to accomplish in that role over the course of the next several years. As stated, I am Tom Conroy. I'm a state representative from Wayland. I have served there for the past 8 years. The district includes today parts of Framingham, parts of Marlboro, Sudbury, and Wayland. And it's been a real honor and a privilege to serve the populace there. I think I've done it honorably. I ran for public office in part to enhance the public's trust in government and in elected officials specifically. I live in Wayland with my wife, who actually works for the Obama administration right now. She's doing the commute thing down in Washington. Our 4 daughters, 3 of whom are triplets. They just graduated from Wayland High School, so they are going to be off to college soon, and we are, my wife and I are still trying to figure out how we're going to pay for that, but that's a real challenge, and I'll talk a little bit about the whole student debt crisis in a moment. And I am running for state treasurer fundamentally because I believe Massachusetts should be a commonwealth of equal opportunity. A place where folks who are working hard and playing by the rules should have a fair and equal chance to move up and move ahead in life. A place where economic justice is not just an idea, but a place where it becomes a reality. Those are the values that inform and guide my actions and my agenda and my priorities up at the State House and will guide me as the next state treasurer. And they've guided me throughout my professional career. And when I think about the experience and the expertise and the achievements that I have that are relevant to the treasurer's office, and I'll talk about those right now, I think those, as I said, are the key differentiators in this race. So that experience includes working in the private sector for 16 years in management consulting, helping companies grow, create new products, new services, and fundamentally new job opportunities for people. I also used best practice financial management from the management consulting world and from the business community and applied that to state agencies to actually enhance their revenues so that they could do more with less. In other words, hire more social workers, more mental health workers, more teachers. That's some of the work that I'd like to do as a state treasurer and some of the work that really differentiates me from others.
No, I've read about that, but what exactly did you do? How did you
Yeah, it sounds like magic, doesn't it?
Outside of state running a state lottery to get in more revenues.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, how did you really?
So there's a couple of things that we did was we identified medical services that were provided to individuals that had private sector health insurance but didn't announce it or know it or offer that information when they went into the emergency department or whether they received some services. Maybe they were on their spouse's plan or maybe they were a 17-year-old kid and they didn't realize it. The private sector health insurance companies didn't pay for that service. Mass Health ended up paying for that service until we got involved and used sophisticated information technology, used sophisticated financial management techniques, and recaptured that money and forced those insurance companies to, in essence, reimburse the state for services that should have been paid for. So that's one example. We also did federal government matching. So if you follow best practices, for example, in the Department of Children and Families, you can actually generate federal revenue. Following federal guidelines, policies, and procedures, and we helped the agency right here in Massachusetts do that to the tune of generating tens of millions of dollars in additional revenue each year. We did that in the 1990s. I'd like to look at the state agencies and see if we can bring in more non-tax revenue in the future as I become the next treasurer. So that's one thing. I also am the only candidate in this race who's worked in finance. And I did that for 10 years, and I think that's really important. The treasurer needs to understand finance, needs to be able to issue bonds, needs to be able to make the right decisions around our long-term financial future. And that's something that I bring to this campaign that really does separate me from the other folks in the race. For the past 8 years, I've served as a state rep, as I talked about, and some of the achievements that I'm proud of are leading the charge on increasing the minimum wage, helping 600,000 workers here in Massachusetts get the ability to put more money into their pockets. That's going to help grow the economy. It's going to increase consumer demand. It's actually going to help create more jobs. And I think that's a real winner for everyone. I have put in place laws to help 67,000 domestic workers, caretakers of our loved ones, whether our children or our elderly, who have too often been abused by their employers. We put together a domestic workers Bill of Rights bill that got signed into law just a couple of weeks ago by the governor that's going to ensure that these people have the same rights that so many of us take for granted in the workplace. There's a whole host of other things that I can talk about, but real results on behalf of working families throughout Massachusetts, that's also something that I bring to this race that really differentiates me from others. What do I hope to do? Real quickly, my priorities. Universal pre-K education. I want to jumpstart that using the authority that the treasurer has in the Mass School Building Authority to start renovating and rebuilding pre-K classrooms so that those families that don't have access to private sector or can't afford private sector pre-K education for their kids can get it through the public school system. I want to focus on this issue of student debt. It's a $1.2 trillion crisis around the country. We should not have families and students in Massachusetts being strangled by this debt over the course of the next 20 years as they're trying to pay it back and pay it back to Wall Street banks at usurious interest rates, 10, 12, 14% interest. Why can't the treasurer be a people's banker and offer low interest loans or more grants or more debt relief for all those students who are aspiring to improve themselves, get a good education, and get into a middle class job?
That's a good question. Why can't they? I mean, they give money now into local community banks that is reinvested, and
that's the third priority of mine, Jim. It's exactly right.
So why can't they do it for student loans? We asked that to some of the other candidates previously. I mean, why haven't they set up
it's something that I want to
tuition
explore.
exchange?
Well, there's been a focus. Steve Grossman's done a good job launching this small business banking partnership, and I want to continue it and expand it, Jim. You raise a great point. And it is a great program. And I know a couple of the banks here have participated, Sage and Lowell 5. In fact, I've talked to a couple of the presidents there, and they have told me how good this program is, and they want to continue it. So the point here is that so far we have invested about $350 million in over 50 banks, which is great. I'd like to go a lot farther. I'd like to get over 100 banks. I'd like to get over $1 billion. The focus has been, number one, encourage those banks to lend to local businesses, which is great because that leads to job growth. Those local businesses with additional capital can expand their operations, hire new people. That's job growth. So that's great. A second issue may be to offer more mortgages and deal with some of the foreclosures that are out there in a responsible and financially prudent way to help families stay in those homes, and also offer lower interest mortgages for folks. So that's an make home ownership more affordable. That's priority number 2. You just mentioned priority number 3, Jim. Can they offer more low interest student loans for families so that college can be affordable for their children? Certainly, as a parent of 3 kids going off to college, I think it's good. It means something personal to me, and I say that by way of empathizing with all those families across Massachusetts who are struggling with this debt and this student loan crisis. And some of them are being deterred from even applying and going to college, which is tragic. Others are drowning in this debt, and it's actually slowing down our economy. You can imagine that these students are unable to buy a new car because they're paying $1,000 a month on debt. They can't afford a new apartment. So instead of spending that way and helping that money circulate in the economy, they're coming back to mom and dad's place, right? They're boomerang kids. They're staying in their homes. I think it's something like 36% of the college graduates here in Massachusetts are doing that. That's not helping. I'd like to see more money circulating in the economy, and I'd like to be the people's banker doing that through the treasurer's office. So those are 3 priorities. So universal pre-K education, dealing with the student debt crisis and lending, putting more of the Commonwealth's checkbook and checking account deposits into the hands of local banks so that they can lend more and do those three things we just talked about. You know, create more jobs by lending to local businesses, make housing more affordable, and making college more affordable.
Okay, now you talk about being the people's banker.
Yes.
Okay, I know my local banker, okay, and I trust them to keep the bank solvent.
Yes, of course.
How are you going to do that? Because a lot of these things you talk about, well, there are some things where you can save money or raise
Sure.
money,
Yes.
but a lot of it is also spending the people's money to do this
Well,
stuff.
you've
okay?
obviously got to balance the
So-
two.
Okay, so how are you going to do that?
So if
And
I
what
can help-
responsibility do you
Sure,
have?
of course, of course. So every time I approach the budget, if I'm offering ideas, and I've done this for the past 8 years, every single budget cycle, I am offering ideas to spend in additional ways, but I'm always bringing in a revenue source to pay for it at the same time. So I'm not being an irresponsible sort of legislator or irresponsible financial or fiscal manager. I'm always doing it in a very balanced approach. And I think I can work around the state, in state agencies, to generate new revenues. I also believe there's a couple of very simple revenue ideas that are worthy out there. You know, removing the exemption on candy and soda, something the governor's been talking about for years. I'm a believer in that. That could be $50 million new dollars. Is that $50 million that could be applied to low interest student loans for students in Massachusetts? Sure, I think that's a great idea. It's a great way to spend that money. So this is the balancing act that I bring forward to address the concerns. I'm not just spend wildly or recklessly. I'm always doing it in a balanced and prudent manner.
Good, good. Okay. Now you talked about your 8 years in the State House.
Yes.
How would you how would you rate yourself as a state rep and watching this budget grow $10 billion since
Yes.
the Patrick took
Yes.
over?
Yes.
Local aid is still $400 million less
Yes.
than pre-2006 levels, and yet that budget has grown close to 34%.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, what did we really
What's
accomplish?
going on?
And then you're also responsible for for looking at the debt, making sure we
Sure.
get good interest rates and stuff.
Right.
Massachusetts is now 47th out of the 50 states with a debt load, debt
Per
burden.
capita, exactly
Per
right.
capita,
I'm very
okay?
concerned about that.
So I mean, what are your views as a treasurer saying, gee, does this budget just keep going and going and going until it breaks? I mean, sure, the Massachusetts economy seems to be doing a little better, but you're the treasurer now. You got that big hat on, and you got to be concerned about this debt. And the legislature likes to spend money. They really do. I mean, all the communities like it and stuff. But that budget has grown, and local aid. We never got the property tax relief we were promised
Right.
under the Patrick.
Yep.
And I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's a great question. It's a two-part question, Jim. So
Yeah, it's a little convoluted.
keep me focused and,
Okay.
and as brief as I need to be on this. But this is the bread and
Let's
butter
talk
kind
about
of
the
stuff.
state's debt. Because,
Sure. Well,
because
this-
we can manage it right now.
Sure.
I mean, even Grossman said that. But you got to.
Yeah.
If he's the governor, he said, you got to be careful. You got to be cautious
Right.
about how you proceed.
Right. So these are really great questions, and this is exactly what I want to focus on as treasurer. It's exactly what I have been focused on for the past 8 years. It's one of the reasons why I'm bringing the expertise and the experience and the results on this kind of stuff to the treasurer's office in this campaign, and why I think a lot of people are going to support me and we're going to win in the end. So how have I focused on this? I've actually authored laws that have enhanced our credit rating. S&P and Fitch and Moody's point to them all the time. By allocating, again, non-tax revenues into long-term liabilities to actually reduce our debt, Jim. So that's something that I'm bringing to this table that no one else in this race is doing. I have helped cities and towns reduce their long-term liabilities by authoring laws there so that they can tap into the finest investment management available as they think about their pension investments and as I think about their health care costs for retirees, municipal retirees, and the municipal burden that is out there. They need to be investing that money wisely, prudently, with the best possible return, and I've helped them do that. And that includes Lowell and every city and town across the country. So I have already tried to, and have successfully addressed these issues of debt being extraordinarily large here on a per capita basis in Massachusetts, and it does concern me. You're exactly right. But I've already taken steps to enhance that credit rating. So I want to continue to do that as treasurer. I've already, I'm going to come up with other ideas, and I'm going to work with my colleagues in the State House to reduce our long-term liabilities and make sure that we are financially and economically strong far into the future. On the budget issue, again, I ran as a state rep with local aid to our communities as my number one priority, and it remains a very, very important priority. If I'm treasurer, I'm taking over management of the lottery, and that's $1 billion of local aid every year, and I want to make sure that that money continues to go back to cities and towns. Why has our budget expanded so much? I'd like to see more local aid go back. To your point, it's $400 million smaller.
That used to be 100% of that lottery aid was designed to go to cities and towns.
Right.
It's down to like about 73%.
Well, that's the 73% payout has been traditionally the payout there. The 28% or 27% goes towards managing the costs of running the lottery and that $1 billion in local aid. So that's been relatively consistent. It hasn't grown that much, but it's been relatively consistent. On the local aid side, particularly around education, the Chapter 70 formula is woefully underfunded and woefully inadequate for the needs at the municipal level that cities and towns are facing. I've done the analysis on this. It's short by about $1.5 billion, particularly as you look at special education. And I think one of my opponents in this race, quite frankly, has in the past somewhere voted against more money for special education, that circuit breaker program, which is sort of a supplement to the Chapter 70 formula. So I've always been in favor of more local aid, and I'm going to work on that as state treasurer. Why has our budget expanded so much? We had something called the Great Recession. And that Great Recession has required us to expand the social safety net that we are offering to people. Look at our health care spending at the State House. That has what has been really going up. Now, what's going on there, Jim? There's a couple of different things. One is we've gone from about 900,000 people on Mass Health to almost double that in the 8 years that I've been there. So what does that mean? That means 1.5, 6, 7, 8 million people now are not making enough money, because the private sector largely is not paying a lot of these people very much money, to afford their own health insurance. And they're qualifying for the state-based Mass Health program because they're making $8, $9, $10 an hour. The Walmarts of the world have thousands of employees here in Massachusetts. They have over 10,000 employees in Massachusetts right now who are on Mass Health. They should be on the Walmart program, but Walmart doesn't either offer a good enough program, or it costs too much for those workers because they're not paying those workers much. The average worker at Walmart makes about $9 an hour, right? So what we've had is this shift of private sector to public sector costs. The state is left holding the bag and picking up the cost for something that the private sector in the past used to pay for, but now they're not, right? So it's that tectonic shift that is going on here, and that's why our budget keeps on going up. What have I done about it? I was the vice chair of the Healthcare Finance Committee last year. Again, finance background. Apply it to some of the biggest challenges that we face fiscally and financially here in Massachusetts. Again, experience and expertise that I'm bringing to this office that my opponents don't really have much experience in. And that is, I helped put together Chapter 224, the Healthcare Quality Improvement and Cost Containment Law that is going to basically cap the amount of total medical expenditures in our Commonwealth, and that's going to help us reduce the growth rate of healthcare spending in our budget. That growth rate has been very high because of what I just explained about the private sector and the public sector and the shifting of the burden. We need to tamp that down. We need to control that, and that's what this bill did. So we're going to see some changes over the course of the next 20 years. We're going to see improved delivery of healthcare services because of that law that I was involved with. We're also going to see costs on a real basis shrink, and I think that's a good thing.
Now, I don't know how much the treasurer has to do with this partners deal. but you are a state, if
Yes.
you are elected, the treasurer, you will be
Right.
one of the top constitutional officers. I mean, what do you think about that deal that was through the Attorney
Well,
General's office?
it's concerning.
Is that good for community hospitals in other areas, and
Well,
Partners just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and
it's concerning. I know Tufts Medical has a partnership with Lowell General, and that's very important. And I want to see a robust set of providers, particularly as it relates to hospitals, but also doctors, in eastern Massachusetts. We cannot have just one megalith healthcare provider, because that's ultimately going to lead to higher costs, and I don't think that's healthy. So I applaud the Tufts Lowell General partnership, and I think we need more of that. I'm certainly concerned that Partners is out there wanting to grow and expand without any sort of constraint. I'm a guy who understands healthcare. I come at it from a variety of different points of experience and expertise, given my private sector background and the work that I've done at the State House. Again, differentiators in this race. I want to be a voice on healthcare. You're right. I don't have, if I become the next treasurer, I won't have statutory authority over healthcare, but I will have a voice. And I'll have a voice because it's so much of a part of our budget, and that budget relates to our long-term debt situation and how much we're taking out of that budget to pay for that debt. It all comes together. It's all about fiscal and financial management. So I will use my voice. Some people call it a bully pulpit. I don't like to be a bully, but I think I can be persuasive with other statewide office holders, the Attorney General and the Governor, and my colleagues in the state legislature, where I have dozens of them supporting me in this race, to ensure that we are addressing our healthcare cost growth and also ensuring that people have access to high quality healthcare throughout Massachusetts. So,
now you talked about the recession. Okay, looking back, all right, is there anything that if you were state treasurer, okay, and in hindsight, okay, that the state didn't do, that you probably, if you go through another recession, you might do as treasurer to soften the blow? We did have to take more than $1 billion out of the rainy day fund, which came in handy.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
set a cushion, and most of that money, I think all of it has been restored,
That's
put
correct.
back. But this year they tapped it for $200 million, which I don't understand.
right, as the economy grows, maybe that wasn't a good use of spending it.
But looking back,
Right.
okay, I mean, did we handle it right? Is there anything that you said that you looked at looking back now? If we go through another recession, which, we know that we're going to get another recession,
Right.
or slow down eventually, it's cyclical. I mean, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think generally we did. And I was part of that, and then I tried to weigh in, and I did. I was on the Ways and Means Committee. I was on healthcare finance. I was always watching this kind of stuff. I was looking at our debt to capital ratios and all the other financially and fiscally prudent decision-making that we needed to do at the State House, through the Governor's office, through the Treasurer's office, and whatnot. There were other things that I think we could have done. I mentioned the candy and the soda tax. I think that's a no-brainer. We are offering corporate tax exemptions to CEOs and other executives for them to buy group life insurance without paying adequate taxes on that. I think that's a loophole that could be closed. There's a couple of other ideas out there that I have that
Why has the legislature been so resistant to look at those loopholes and close those? Everybody comes in and talks about it,
right.
and they put it out there like a campaign slogan, and then they go back to the legislature and
Right.
but even local reps say the same thing. And
I think
and
to
there's no will.
Right.
There's a stronger won't than a
Right.
stronger
Yeah,
will.
Sure.
to do this.
Well, and I want to, in part, get into a position in statewide office where I know I have the courage to be outspoken on some of these fiscal and financial matters that are going to make sense for the taxpayers of Massachusetts, help grow the economy, and make us financially strong. That's my goal, and ultimately enhance the public's trust in government, which is again why I first ran for office. There is fear of talking about raising taxes and not getting reelected, right? That's a fear that I think every single elected official throughout the country has to some degree. Others have it a great sense of fear. Myself, I have less fear there because I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm confident that I can make a persuasive argument to the people of the Commonwealth as to why we need these things and why these are good, smart ideas, and how that money will be spent in a fiscally prudent and smart and wise way to generate more economic growth and more opportunities for people. I think we don't have enough money in workforce training, right? We've got roughly 400,000 people on the sidelines who want to work, are capable of working, but can't find jobs or don't have the skills and the training that they need to get into the 100,000 jobs that are open, right? I believe government should play a larger role than what we have been playing to offer workforce training, education, skills-based assistance to those workers so that they can fill those jobs, rather than having somebody come from out of state or, God forbid, across the world to take on those jobs at the expense of the Massachusetts residents, right? Let's give those people the skills they do. The return on investment of that kind of workforce training spending is enormous. You're putting people back to work. They're going to pay income taxes. They're going to spend more and pay more sales taxes. You're getting them off the unemployment insurance rolls. That's going to save businesses money. It's going to reduce the unemployment insurance tax that corporations pay. Right? It's a win-win-win all the way around. It's a huge multiplier effect. We are investing less than 1/10 of what we need to spend, or could be spending, I should say, on workforce training. And that's an area that I think we could have focused on over the course of the last 5 years more than we did.
Why would the legislature improve the minimum wage increase? Didn't it take care of that unemployment reform to the insurance fund? I mean, are they going to take that up separately, or why was
just to make sure I understand your question. So we did pass the minimum wage bill.
The employers, okay, yes, but there was
Right.
talk about doing a balance,
Right.
getting business groups to come on board to
Sure.
support it. But they said that they'd probably compromise and then look at and reform the
Unemployment insurance system.
yes,
We did that.
yes.
We did that. So I helped put together, I led the charge on both of those issues. Minimum wage, because I know it was the right thing to do, as we talked about, help 600,000 working families around the Commonwealth have a better chance to move up and move ahead in life and get more money in their pockets. That's a winner. I led the charge on that. I was asked to put forward the unemployment insurance reform package as the chairman of the committee. I did that, and we did reform it, and we are giving businesses a tax break over the course of the next 4 years through that bill. The governor signed that into law
I
at the
thought
end
that
of
was,
June.
okay, so what was
Well,
that?
they got together and hashed
Oh, in
it
a
out.
joint conference committee?
We did,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we did. I was on that
Initially,
conference
the
committee.
Senate wasn't part of it.
Oh,
Right,
They wanted
okay,
to
I stand
separate.
corrected.
right. No, that's okay. It's hard to keep track of all the different things that are going on at the State House over the course of the past 2 months. There's been a lot of moving pieces and lots of bills that have, were at various stages of completion. I had
No.
one bill that I wanted to get passed that, came about this close to getting enacted and getting to the governor's desk, and we fall just.
What was that?
It's actually uniform wage compliance, offering people a better opportunity to ensure that they're being paid the right wages, and that fraudulent or cheating businesses were not, cheating workers out of wages that they deserved. And it got engrossed but not enacted, which is literally just hopefully we can get it done in voice vote over the course of the next several months. So that's still out there.
One of your opponents in this race has come up really stridently for the expansion of the charter school
Yes.
recently, and that was rejected. We know, although the House passed it, the Senate
Yes,
Senate rejected it.
That's correct, Jim. Yes.
So where do you stand on what are your views on charter school expansion? And that would have been only for seats for the lowest 10% performing school districts like
right,
Lowell
right.
and Springfield, Holyoke, Brockton, places like that. So
Right. This is a real difference between my opponent and me on this issue. I was against raising the cap this time around. The funding formula still hasn't been fixed. That's been a problem since charters got allowed and authorized back, I think, in 1995 or 93. And it's taking money, it's siphoning money away from our traditional public schools. And if we're going to have any sort of reform of education related to lifting the cap on charter, we've got to fix that funding formula. So I was against it this time around, and I know my opponent was a big proponent of lifting that cap. I think the other thing is that we in the legislature and the governor signed a law in 2010 that lifted the cap back then. We haven't evaluated the charters that have started in 2011, 12, and 13. We haven't evaluated them. The jury is still out. Are they successful or not? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they better than traditional schools or not? Let's gather the data first before we rush to judgment and just create more of them. It's not clear that they're outperforming traditional public schools right now.
Is it the role of the Treasurer's Office to look at reforming taxation in Massachusetts?
I
or to
think
make
so.
recommendations on
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I think you need to be a steward who has the big picture on our fiscal, financial, and economic future. One of the most important roles of the treasurer, and again, here's a real differentiator for me as a guy who came out of the finance industry, is the treasurer needs to issue bonds. And by issuing bonds, what you're doing to the market, you're saying to the marketplace is, Massachusetts is a good risk. Massachusetts is a good investment. And here's why. Here's the way our economy is strong and diversified and is going to be able to pay back the interest on this debt and the principal over the course of the next 20 or 30 years. Here's why we're fiscally smart. We're managing our budget properly. Nobody has more experience than that on that topic than I do in this race, given the focus that I've had on the budget and on all financial matters. Here is the financial perspective that we had, the debt per capita, your point that you raised up earlier, our long-term liabilities, the amount of debt that we have out there, the ratio of that debt and the interest rate on that we're paying out of our budget as it relates to the total budget. Should it be 8%? Should it be 6%? Should it be 10%? I have focused on this stuff. I have read these reports. This is what the treasurer needs to know to make that case to potential bond investors. Every time we want to fix a bridge or fix a school or fix our water infrastructure, the treasurer is the one who is making that case. And I believe, with a certain amount of humility and confidence, that I can make that case better than anybody else in this race. And what does it mean? It means the difference between a 5% interest rate on that debt versus a 3% interest rate.
Well,
You know how important that is.
You've read those reports. I've read some reports done by some top economists in the state who say if the Massachusetts does comprehensive tax reform,
Yes.
okay, that they would actually generate more jobs and revenue than the taxation formulas that are unfair
So
right now.
is this corporate taxation or income tax or sales tax
Well,
or all the
like
above?
you said, it's comprehensive. It
Right.
looks at
Gas
everything,
tax. Yeah, okay.
I mean, there's some states out there don't have sales taxes, don't have income
Right.
taxes.
Sure.
They're not going bankrupt. They make up the difference in
Somewhere
other ways
else. That's right.
that are conducive to them and their
Yes.
economy.
Yes.
Okay, now,
Yes.
we know Massachusetts has a global economy, but we're into more information technology. We don't
Yes.
produce, we don't have the manufacturing
Factory
baking
jobs, so we
stuff.
did,
We
yep.
hope it comes back, but,
Right.
you got financials, medicine,
Yes.
the device, medical devices.
Exactly,
We're moving
yes.
more into environmental and clean
Yes.
technologies and
Yes.
stuff. So what makes sense for the industries that we are promoting?
Great question.
As well as the people who work in those industries,
question.
okay?
Right.
So I don't know the answer. I mean, I'm
Right.
just raising the question, but I've read some of these things, and it would be good to do,
An evaluation of that.
yes, and a study that
I like it.
actually doesn't go up on a shelf and collects dust, but then you say, maybe you gotta pass it in pieces, because
Right.
no one's gonna,
Sure.
swallow the
Swallow the
whole.
whole thing. Right.
Okay.
Well,
So-
I think
But I
that's
just asked, when was the last time anything came out of the treasurer's office that looked
Right.
at something, this important and this valuable,
I think it's a great
Come out
idea.
of Boston College, it seems
Yep,
like.
it's a great idea. And
Or
I'd love,
Yale.
I'd love, I'd love to take you up on that idea, and I'd love to implement it. I will say that I have done a lot of that work already. Again, experience, expertise, and results. So what did I do when the governor came out with his new big tax proposal, as you remember, back in January of 2013? It was not as well received as the governor would have liked up at the State House. I saw that, and I put forth an alternative. An alternative that would raise a certain amount of money that would help rebuild our public infrastructure, but also invest in early childhood education, the universal pre-K stuff I was talking about. Also control costs on higher ed so that more students could afford the UMass system, right? I put together a whole package because, you know, Jim, I'm the kind of guy that has read the 110-page line-by-line breakdown of how our corporate tax structure works and all the different tax credits and tax exemptions that are available to businesses. I've read through that, right? I've offered ideas to the chairman of the Revenue Committee on the 10 or 11 or 12 that I thought could be zeroed out and shifted in accordance with the new types of industries that we have here in Massachusetts, as you just said, life sciences and biotech, clean tech, clean energy, right? Renewable energy. So I've done some of that work. I've looked at the sales tax. I know how the income tax works. Do we need to make the income tax more progressive? I think so. That's something that could be part of this whole study. So I've done a lot of this work. I want to continue to focus on it. And you're right. The treasurer testifies a couple of times a year. Once in December when we look at the revenue estimates at the legislature and with the governor's office about how much we can expect for the next fiscal year. What do we need to rely on as we start producing budgets? That's when the treasurer testifies. I think the treasurer can testify throughout the year. Anytime there's a fiscal or financial issue that is coming up before the Commonwealth that is of
The
pertinence to
legislature might not want that transparency. I don't know.
Well, I certainly want to bring it. You know, I think transparency, accountability, a sense of responsibility and due
I'm only
diligence
kidding. I'm only
is.
kidding.
No, I understand.
All right,
those are
so
important.
last two questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, unless anybody else has
No,
any
go right
questions, okay? Where do you stand on question one? Okay, because the gas tax is gonna.
This
that's
is the
question
indexing
one,
of the
the
gas tax.
indexing of the
Yep.
gas tax, okay, and then casino gambling. What do you?
I am against voting in favor of the. This is to
Okay,
get
gas
rid
tax.
of
Let's
the
do the
gas
gas
tax
tax, yes.
indexing. Right, it's
Yes.
complicated the way to
Yes.
explain it, but
But-
I believe in indexing the gas tax.
You do.
I do. Yes, I'd like to see that be indexed, far into the future. I thought we could have done a little bit more. 3 cents did not.
Doesn't that open the door to indexing every tax? You know, I mean, shouldn't that be something that
I'm not-
legislators we elect, they set policy, they
I thi-
vote it. I mean,
I think you're right, Jim. I mean,
sunset it after 2 years, then re-vote it. I mean, what's wrong with that?
and
Times
and the
change, legislatures
and the
change.
legislature always has that opportunity. This is not a novel idea, indexing. Indexing's been around for decades, right? So on this particular bill, the legislature chose to index it. I thought that was a good idea. The next, if there is a next tax increase, and I don't know if there is, but if there is, the decision will be made, index or not index. It will be done on a not an ad hoc basis. What do I want to say? A case by case. Thank you. A case by case basis. Absolutely.
This is what bothers me about that, and once again, everybody's got a different opinion. But you tell people to conserve. You tell us that you tell the country to let's cut our foreign dependency.
Right.
People of Massachusetts have bought Priuses. They've conserved gas. Everything else. And then you realize, oh gee, the revenues are going down from the gas tax. So now we got to index it. So you tell people to do it, they respond,
Right.
and yet it's not bringing enough money for roads, bridges, all this other stuff.
But the gas tax hadn't been raised since 1992, right? On an inflation-adjusted basis, we could have raised it 19, 20 cents just to catch up with where it was. Instead, we raised it 3 cents. I mean, so this is not a huge additional burden. We're just trying to keep up with the rising cost of providing services, right?
Okay, all right.
On the casino
good.
thing,
Casino,
I've always been against casinos. There's no difference between me and the others in this race with regard to where we stand on the issue. I think the key differences here is that I saw this potential problem for the Treasurer's office a long time ago, 8 years ago, when this whole casino issue came up. I did a cost-benefit analysis of whether or not 3 casinos in Massachusetts was good for the economy or bad, good for the Treasurer's office and local aid as it relates to the lottery, or bad. And the bottom line was, particularly on the lottery, it's bad. You can imagine that today somebody buying a scratch ticket, tomorrow, if there's a casino down the road, is not going to be buying a scratch ticket, right? They're going to be going down the road to gamble in a casino. And that jeopardizes, puts at risk, in fact, gambles with local aid that's coming out of the lottery and out of the Treasurer's office. So I put a report together 8 years ago. I'd be happy to share it with you on that topic. And that's why I'm very concerned as the next treasurer about how we address this. What am I going to do about it? Well, I want to convene a task force in November, immediately after getting elected, that will try to address this and put together a couple of different options on how to mitigate the loss in lottery revenues if we do have casinos. If that repeal effort fails and we get 3 or 4 casinos here in Massachusetts, the treasurer's office needs to have a plan in place, needs to have options at the ready to put in place to ensure that that $1 billion in local aid, $21 million of which goes back to Lowell, needs to continue to flow back to Lowell so that you can do all that you need to do here in the city in terms of public safety, public works, etc. That's how that local aid is being spent.
Tom Conroy, we're happy to have you here today. It was very enlightening. 30 seconds, no
Yes.
filibustering.
Yes.
Why should people vote for you, and why should you get the Sun's endorsement? 30 seconds.
I-
Economy of words.
Sure.
State Treasurer. and
I would be honored to earn your endorsement, Jim, and everyone here at the Lowell Sun. Thanks for the opportunity. People want 3 things out of the next treasurer. They want progressive values. They want someone with the experience and the expertise to do the job from day one. And they want someone who has a track record of generating positive results for the working families of Massachusetts, directly related to the treasurer's issues and the treasurer's roles and responsibilities. I have all 3 of those characteristics. That's why people, I think, are going to be voting for me on September 9th. That's why I think I'm going to win. And that's why I think I can be a really, really good treasurer for all the taxpayers in Massachusetts.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.